Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places. Today, we're going to dive into a classic children's story, A Little Princess, and use it as a powerful case study on psychological resilience, and really what it means to be truly unbreakable. Let's get into it.
So let's kick things off with a really fundamental question, one that kind of flips our usual fairy tale ideas on their head. When we say princess, what are we actually talking about? Is it all about the crowns and the castles, or is it something else entirely?
I mean, is it defined by all the external stuff? The wealth, the fancy clothes, the titles? Or is it about the internal qualities, the things that nobody can ever strip away from you, like resilience, empathy, and just plain dignity?
And you know what? To find the answer, we don't need some dense research paper. We just need to look at the case of Sara Crewe, the hero of A Little Princess. Her story is basically the perfect stress test for this very idea.
Okay, so first, we really have to understand the sheer scale of the psychological test Sara was put through. Her world wasn't just shaken up a bit, it was completely, suddenly frozen over. I mean, just look at how fast and how far she fell. One day, on her 11th birthday of all days, she has everything. Her father, a massive fortune, top-tier social status. And then, boom. In an instant, it is all gone. Her life goes from luxury to rags. Her status plummets from the celebrated star pupil to a lowly servant. And her relationships? They go from admiration to outright mockery and abuse. This is the definition of an extreme psychological pressure test. So the big question is, how on earth did she survive all that? How did she walk through that psychological frozen soil and not just break? Well, the answer wasn't just dumb luck. It's because she had this powerful, unbreakable inner toolkit. Her mind, it literally became her fortress when she had no other shelter in the world. And this is key. She wasn't just passively sitting there and enduring it. Nope. She had an active strategy, and it was built on three core mental pillars: her own internal value system, her incredible imagination, and this deep, profound instinct for empathy. Let's break those down. All right, first up, the Princess Creed. Now, this might sound a little bit quaint, but it was so much more than just a cute phrase. This was her personal constitution. It was an internal code that guided every one of her actions, and most importantly, protected her sense of self-worth. When the whole world was telling her she was worthless, this creed reminded her that her value had nothing to do with her circumstances. Second, she used that amazing imagination of hers as a tool, a really powerful one. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called cognitive reframing. She wasn't using her imagination to escape reality, but to actively change how she interpreted it. And that is a crucial survival skill. For instance, in her own mind, she wasn't a servant. She was a princess in exile going through a heroic trial. Her cold, miserable attic, that was a prison cell in a storybook, like the Bastille. This is such a brilliant move, right? By doing this, she created a mental buffer, this protective layer between her spirit and the brutal harshness of her actual life. And third, her empathy. And this one might be the most amazing of all. Because even when she had absolutely nothing to her name, she was still giving. She became friends with Becky, the scullery maid, completely breaking the isolation she must have felt. She showed kindness to animals. And then there was this one little act. She returned a lost monkey to a neighbor. Seems small, right? Well, that simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because that inner toolkit didn't just help her survive her reality. It actually actively changed it. What looks like a magical fairy tale ending on the surface is really a direct result of her character in action. Just look at this chain of events. It is so clear. Her empathy makes her return the monkey. That single act opens the door for a conversation, a talk that would have never, ever happened otherwise. That conversation leads to a massive revelation about who she is, and that revelation leads to her entire fortune and life being restored. See? It's not magic. It's cause and effect, kicked off by one small, selfless choice.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this whole case study tell us about what true wealth, what real nobility actually is?
Well, from a modern psychology perspective, Sara's story is just a perfect example of what we call a high adversity quotient, or AQ. It's basically a measure of how well you handle the tough stuff. And her story is a masterclass in how you build it, not by what you have, but by deliberately practicing your internal values, your reframing, and your empathy, especially when it's the hardest thing in the world to do. I think the best way to think about it is this metaphor right here. Sara was like a seed buried in frozen soil. The world around her was harsh, cold, totally unforgiving. It should have destroyed her. But that inner creed of hers, that was the hard shell of the seed, protecting the life inside. And her empathy? That was her instinct to always, always reach for the light, no matter how dark it got. And that just brings us right back to the central truth of the entire story, doesn't it? It's the core of resilience itself. The most valuable assets we possess, they aren't external. They're our character, our values, our inner strength. That is the wealth that no one can ever take from you. And that really just leaves us with one final thought, something for you to reflect on. When your own world starts to feel like that frozen soil, when you're up against your own challenges, what is the inner wealth that you're cultivating? What is the seed that you are protecting?